If you live in Essex and happen to be a keen gardener, you'll be very familiar with the quality of the soil in your garden, or to be more accurate, the lack of quality. Dig beyond the topsoil and inevitably you'll hit clay in abundance. Whilst this may be the curse of the keen gardener, it's the key ingredient in brickmaking, a prominent industry here in Essex in bygone years. The oldest known bricks, from around 7,500 years BC, were made from sun-dried mud in southern Turkey and Jericho. The Egyptians also used sun-dried mud bricks, but it was the Romans who appreciated that kiln-fired bricks were far more durable, and they were probably the first to stamp their bricks with a maker's mark. Although the Romans were the first to make bricks in England, the craft died out once they left our shores at the end of the 5th century. The earliest recorded bricks in Essex are at Coggeshall Abbey and date from around 1120. Medieval craftsmen were obliged to join guilds in order to protect their trades, and brickmakers were no exception. The earliest, the Worshipful Company of Tilers and Bricklayers, is recorded in London, and in 1568 was granted a charter from Elizabeth I. The guild controlled wages, apprenticeships, and the quality of work within London and the home counties. But in 1666, the Great Fire of London changed demand, and in the rebuilding, King Charles II decreed that houses be built of fire-resistant materials. His decision gave a huge increase to the trade, and just under 300 years later, the Blitz gave brickmaking its second boost. In Essex, there were brickworks in Great Wakering, Hawkwell, Rochford, Great Stanbridge, Hullbridge, and many more in the neighbouring villages. Studying various generations of ordnance survey maps of the early 20th century highlights just how many clay pits and brickworks there were in this corner of the county. By the beginning of the 20th century, brickmaking in Essex had grown so much that the total workforce was larger than all other forms of local employment. Before the advent of economical transport, most trades supported their local communities, so there are many old red brick buildings in this part of Essex that probably owe their construction to the local clay and our brickmaking ancestors. Whilst the product of these industries has survived, unfortunately, very little evidence of the brickworks and kilns remain. However, one or two reminders have endured, like this row of 10 cottages in Hullbridge. They were originally built to house the workers from the Hockley Brickworks Company, now the site of Tower Caravan Park, which took its name from the water tower that became a prominent landmark and a relic from the brickworks. In Hockley, the Cherry Orchard Brickworks has long been demolished and the site is currently under redevelopment. But even today, you can still see evidence of the brickworks, but you need to know where to look, as the march of time is slowly eroding every last fragment of this industry. Today, the only evidence we can see is this short row of tied cottages and a few metres of track as it crosses Cherry Orchard Lane near the football pitches, and in the lower section of the lane, this single piece of track remains defiantly embedded in the tarmac. When Cherry Orchard Way was constructed, it cut through between the extraction site and the brickworks, so this tunnel was constructed so that the 2-foot gauge railway could continue to move material from one site to the other. Many brickworks in Essex utilise small steam locos to move materials around the works. The one in Cherry Orchard Lane is believed to be the very last to see active service. The locos and wagons languished outside the closed brickworks for several years and were finally sold back to their original maker, Alan Keefe, in Ross-on-Wye. By 1995, production and extraction had ceased at Cherry Orchard and was transferred to Star Lane in Great Wakering. This site, which started production around 1938, continued until 2005, when it was the last surviving brickworks in Essex. The Star Lane Brickworks was operated by the Milton Hall Brick Company, who purchased the land after selling their original site to Southend Stadium for greyhound racing, also the former home of Southend United. The stadium closed in 1985, making way for the current retail park. In Ashington, Hawkwell Brickfield Limited had works here in Magnolia Park and Nature Reserve. Between 1937 and 1960, there are rumours of some remaining earthworks, but reports are vague and the exact location debatable. The site also operated a 2-foot gauge railway, but by all accounts, this narrow gauge V-skip wagon didn't originate from this site. But it does at least pay tribute to the site's former occupation, and that's typical of our heritage, where such an important and significant industry has almost completely disappeared from our county without a trace, save a few road names and cottages. So if you're local to this area, the next time you pass an old red brick building, you just might want to consider where the bricks were made, as there's a good chance that the clay was dug from a pit not far from where you live.